Hi everyone, my name is Howard, and I want to welcome you to this webinar about tips for a more healthy and enjoyable PhD experience. Just to introduce myself a bit, I was born in Beijing, China, but moved to the US at a young age. And in college, I majored in electrical engineering, and after college, I went to UC Berkeley for a PhD in electrical engineering and computer science. And after my PhD, I worked as a professor for 4 years at California State University East Bay, and now I work as a senior data scientist at Chalk Children's Hospital. Aside from that, I've also been serving as a mentor for graduate and international students for the past 10 years, and have seen multiple stories of success and failure, both as a PhD student myself, as well as a mentor of other PhD students. And in this presentation, I hope to share with you my experience to help you better go through your PhD program. I want to first begin by saying that graduate school can seem intimidating in the beginning. The fact that you're in grad school probably means that you used to be among the top of your class in undergrad. However, you're now surrounded with others whose academic level is as good as, if not better than yours. And when you meet your classmates or cohort for the first time, some of them may talk about big ideas that they have, and in your classes, some of them may sound like they know everything. And if you're in this kind of environment, you may feel anxious and stressed out, and put a lot of pressure on yourself. So I hope these tips could help you and give you confidence as you navigate through these next years. The first tip I want to give you is, don't try to do too much. And this may sound surprising to you. But one thing you'll notice as you get into your program is that there are many possible things you can do. These things could include your research, writing papers or grants, attending classes or seminars, teaching, as well as grading. And unless you're Superman and can do all these things well at the same time, you'll have to learn to prioritize and do the things that are more important. As a PhD student, one of the most important things is actually your research. And in light of that, you should be careful not to be spending too much time on the many other things. For example, you should not hope to take 20 units of classes, and sometimes even 2 classes can be a heavy course load. And it's okay to audit classes to get a flavor of what different fields are about, but do it in a way that doesn't take up too much of your time. You also don't have to feel like you have to be the best TA or have the most thorough grading standards, but try to do these things in a fast and efficient way. And what's important is that you take time to find a research advisor that you feel comfortable working with. An article from the Journal of Nature Biotechnology says that positive mentoring relationships between graduate students and their PI or advisors correlate significantly with less anxiety and depression. So remember to think carefully and find a research advisor you feel comfortable with. The more you enjoy working with your advisor, the easier it'll be for you to graduate. You also don't have to work for a famous professor to be successful. In fact, you may end up competing against more of that professor's students for his or her approval, and that could lead to greater anxiety and stress. And if possible, talk to different advisors and attend their group meetings in your first quarter or semester. This will help you in deciding who to work for. For me, there was one professor I was interested in working for, but after attending a lab meeting and speaking with one of the PhD students there, I changed my mind and decided to not work there anymore. Another student I know who worked for the professor ended up dropping out of the program after getting a master's because he was not inspired by the research. I was eventually able to find a professor that I felt comfortable with, and I enjoyed the research enough so that I was able to keep going even when things got difficult. The second tip I want to give you is regarding the importance of your GPA. The reason many of you are in grad school is that you've done well in your classes in undergrad and probably got a reasonably high GPA. You're probably used to doing well in your classes and maintaining that high GPA. In the previous tip, we discussed the importance of doing good research as a PhD student, But you might be wondering, do I still need to be at the top of my classes? And how important is my GPA? Well, there's usually a minimum department requirement for your GPA so that you can do things like take your qualifying exam or do your dissertation defense. And some employers may also be interested in your GPA. However, I've never had an employer who commented on my GPA, and employers who hire PhD level job applicants are usually much more interested in your research. They could ask you all kinds of questions you did in your research while asking no questions at all about your coursework. So as long as your GPA is above the minimum required GPA for a department, you should be okay. However, you should be careful that the minimum GPA requirement for graduate students is usually higher than for undergraduate students. For graduate students, the requirement is usually a 3.0 or a B or higher. And for undergraduates, the requirement is usually a 2.0, which is a C. Because of this, professors of graduate level courses usually give higher average GPAs than professors of undergraduate courses. In one class I was in, there was a grading curve where the person who got the worst grade received a B+, and almost everyone else received some form of an A. And this is not an uncommon experience. Also, you want to be especially careful when you take upper division undergraduate classes that fulfills your graduate requirements. Remember that undergrads usually just need a 2.0 or a C, but you need at least a 3.0 or a B. The professor teaching the undergraduate class might not care that you're a graduate student and grade you on the same scale used for undergraduates. You would have to work harder to make sure that your performance is significantly above average in the course against undergraduate students who may be quite competitive. So in the end, my best advice to you is to choose your classes in a way where you feel comfortable about being able to get a good grade. But you don't have to be a straight A student. The third tip I want to give you is that you should treat your PhD program like a marathon. A marathon is a race where you have to run for a long time. In the case of your PhD, you might have to do it for 5, 6, or sometimes 7 or more years. Your success in a program depends a lot on your perseverance and less on your raw intelligence. There'll be moments when things don't happen the way you hope, such as when you get a paper rejected, or can't produce research results, or even fail an important exam. In these situations, you may feel like you're not smart or talented enough, which could lead you to feel unmotivated to continue. But here's a quote from Angela Duckworth, a psychology professor from the University of Pennsylvania, and she is famous for her work on understanding how people succeed. She says, "As much as talent counts, effort counts twice." So the important thing for you is to just keep trying. One disappointment I had as a PhD student was when I failed my first attempt at my preliminary exam. The exam was 1 hour long, and we had to quickly respond to answers from 3 professors who could ask anything they want from 3 different subject areas. Initially, I thought I gave the right answers to most of the problems, but I later learned that I failed because I was too slow and struggled in the process of coming up with the right answers. I was so discouraged and thought there was no way I could meet the standards of the exam. But I resolved to try harder next time and studied nonstop for 8 hours a day, 3 weeks straight during my winter break before the exam. I passed the second time and learned a valuable lesson in perseverance. Also, in order for you to prepare for a long program, it's important for you to develop healthy life habits, maintain a normal work schedule, and use your time well. Try to get to work early by 8 or 9 a.m. and end your work at a reasonable time in the evening, and work afterwards only if you have to, such as when you have an important deadline. Don't spend hours on the internet, social media, or playing games during those work hours. If you do that, you'll find yourself staying up well past midnight and feeling more tired and unmotivated. When I was in my program, I lived with a roommate who was in the same department as me, and he would get up at 7 a.m. every day, eat a healthy breakfast, lunch, and take a nap in the afternoon, and almost always go to bed by 11 p.m. I never saw him spend significant time playing games on his computer, and at the end, he finished his program successfully and became a professor at one of the major research universities in the US. And also, with your extra time, I encourage you to do something that I did in grad school, which is to think about your long-term goals in life. Your PhD is not your life, trust me. You can think about your life by reading books and ask questions such as, is there more to my life than just school and academics? Or what should my life really be about? Or how important are my relationships in life? As you think about your life more, you may even realize that a PhD is not the right path for you, and that's perfectly okay. I've seen quite a few students who decide to leave the PhD program after getting a master's, and their lives have been just fine. The fourth tip I want to give you is don't be a perfectionist. Perfectionists are people who have such high standards for their work that they will spend a lot of time on something that is very small. Sometimes, perfectionists will always feel like there's more work that needs to be done on some paper or assignment, even though it is good enough to be submitted. Here is the Pareto principle, or the 80-20 principle. It says that 20% of your activities will account for 80% of your results. This being the case, you should use your time to focus on tasks that will help you accomplish more. Don't be a perfectionist who's focused on getting the last 20% of your output while spending 80% of your time. Things that you should focus on are getting initial experimental results or that first paper draft out. These activities get you most of the way there. You can fine-tune your experiment or your paper later if you have to. One way in which perfectionism can be most harmful is when you're writing your PhD dissertation. In the dissertation, you're putting together almost the entire body of your work for the past 3 to 4 years into a single document. You have generated many results, published some papers, and now you want to tie it all together into a single narrative to convince your committee how you have made a unique contribution to your research field. This could seem like an impossible task. And if you're someone who refuses to approach a task unless you have things perfectly thought out, then it will be difficult for you to even start writing. So perfectionism in this situation leads to procrastination. I have seen people who could not finish a PhD dissertation because they are perfectionists. They should have finished their writing within a couple semesters, but they just had trouble starting to write, and after many years, they still haven't finished. It is a sad experience, and I hope it doesn't happen to you. There's a concept called the power of small, where the lesson is to approach big tasks by doing one small thing at a time. Perhaps you can make it a goal of writing just 1 or 2 pages a day. The same goes with other papers you might have to write. It's generally a good idea to get that first draft out as quickly as possible, with all its imperfections. You will have opportunities to improve it later if you want. The fifth tip I want to give you is to find a community. Being surrounded by people you feel comfortable with is an important part of your PhD experience and for your mental health. Another study from an article in the Journal of Nature Biotechnology says that graduate students are more than 6 times as likely to experience depression and anxiety as compared to the general population. Depression and anxiety can come during times when you feel discouraged, when you feel exam or not make research progress. And during those moments, having others around you to give you perspective is helpful. These people can be fellow students or even older mentors who have gone through the program. The older people can be helpful as they can give you tips on doing experiments, what directions to take, and how to avoid danger. When I was in graduate school, I had the chance to live with several other PhD students. I met them through being invited to a graduate student group at UC Berkeley. That group gave me a chance to think about what my life should really be about. I also became friends with other students in that group, and we moved into an apartment together. We often talked to each other about our day in the lab, how our research is going, and we also went on trips together and celebrated each other's birthdays and graduations. It made things feel as though we are not alone. One way we help each other is that when one person had an important exam, such as a qualifying exam, the rest of us would help that person by allowing him to give a practice talk in front of us. After the talk, we would provide that person with feedback. The feedbacks could range from the way the slides appear, which parts are not clear, how to improve figures, and a host of other details. Our goal is to have our feedback be even more challenging than the feedback from the committee of the actual exam, so that the person will ultimately have an easier time on the actual exam. Bill Gates, the co-founder of Microsoft, says that we all need people to give us feedback. That's how we improve. But you might still be wondering, how can I find a community of other graduate students? Where are they? Well, we at ISMP can help you. We can introduce you to other mentees who are also in graduate school. Some of our mentors are also graduate students or recently finished graduate school. And you can also do what I did, which was finding a graduate student group on campus where each of us had a common interest in thinking about important questions for our lives. Okay, so that concludes the 5 tips for a healthier and more enjoyable PhD experience. Once again, they're the following. Don't try to do too much. Make sure you prioritize finding a good research advisor and lab, and don't overload your schedule with too many other things. Second is regarding the importance of your GPA. Make sure you understand the minimum GPA requirements and choose the right classes, but don't stress out if you're not a straight A student. Third, that a PhD program is like a marathon. Make sure you take care of your body and maintain a regular work schedule as much as possible. Cut out distractions such as social media so you don't have to stay up way too late. 4, don't be a perfectionist. For things like long papers or even your PhD dissertation, don't expect to have things perfectly thought out before you start writing. Try to get the first draft done as fast as possible and improve from there. The final tip is to find a community. I really hope that all of you can take time to find a community while in your program, because going through it alone can be tough and depressing. We need both encouragement and feedback from others to be successful. Okay, so that concludes the 5 tips. And my hope is that every one of you can be successful in your PhD program. It's a long several years, and we want you to have the right mindset from the beginning. Please take this advice to heart, and we at ISMP are here for you. Thank you.